Hi, Ray Bear back in my blaster lab. We're going to start our assembly of the F-11 Delta blaster rifle from Star Wars The Force Awakens. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start is the scope and the rail system on this. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you some of the tools I use, and this is pretty important. This is the extra thick Maxicure super glue. It gives you like 10 to 25 seconds, depending on humidity and temperature, of working time before it actually sets up. So you got to hold it in place perfectly still for a little bit, but then, you know, after 20 seconds you can let go and it's hard as a rock. So this is the stuff that you want. Now you can get this, I paid 10 bucks at my local hobby shop, and while you're there at the hobby shop, get a roll of this. It's self-adhesive fine sandpaper. I think this is like 180 grit, something like that. That's good. 180, 220, 240, anything like that's fine. And then maybe at Walmart they sell these little packages, 99 cents a piece or something, of these craft sticks, and you need the fat ones and the skinny ones. Okay, and what I do is I take a good pair of scissors and I square off one end. On both of them, and then I wrap it with this, and I'm gonna actually do it the long way. This is another thing you need, is an X-Acto knife. I use two different ones. This the number 4 blade, and then I use this flat scraper. But you can actually get away without this one, but it's handy to have for filling out the insides. So I'm going to put this on my craft stick on one edge, lined up, and lined up with the flat edge. It's pressure sensitive, so it don't really stick until you push. And then I'm going to cut this. Cut from the back side, because the other side will make your blade bad even faster. And then I fold it over, and again. Now you've actually got one edge that's really thin that you can use that for tight spots too. That comes in handy. And then I'll just trim off the excess. That for my short one. It don't go quite all the way around, but it does on one side, so that's good enough. See, on this side it's a little bit short, a little shy, but that's good. So this is the craft sticks that we cover with sandpaper, and what we use that for is for cleaning up the parts. Okay. So these are the parts of the rail system and the scope. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is clean up our parts with the craft sticks. It don't take much. It's just a light sanding. Just taking out any imperfections on the surface, and you're also knocking the gloss off the part that's, you know, the part when it's printing, the part that's touching the bed comes out shiny. There. Alright, so the reason we do that is one, for it to take paint, because it won't take paint very well if it's smooth and not sanded. And glue, for when you're matching surfaces aren't sanded, the glue will not stick very well. It'll break very easily. So, and this is this part here is gonna need an angle. So here's a little trick for you. Take a slice of this. This is going to get put on the barrel. Just take the barrel and temporarily just glue this piece of sandpaper to there, so now you've got the profile for sanding this. So it's a lot easier and more precise than getting in there with your finger and a piece of sandpaper. So this takes all the doubt out of the situation. All you got to do, like that. Look at that. Yeah, I get a good idea once in a while. Also work. Now that's for the scope, so that's a different. Although it might work because it's close enough. Well, let's see. So that's for this profile. So you could do the same thing with this piece. Put a little piece of sandpaper there when you clean that part. So then there's this other piece for the rail system. Now I'm not sanding inside here. If I were, I would just use this piece for the profile. But I'm not sanding in there because I actually like, that's the inside of the rail, and I like the texture from the way it leaves it. So, and there's nothing getting glued to it, so it's not important that it gets cleaned. So there's this other piece here. Big enough so you can get one of the little stick in there, and you got to clean that up a little bit. And once you get that cleaned up a little bit, then the front of the rail will be able to slip down in there and kind of pop right in. And then when you put it down, see it's locked now, it won't come out. And then the other end of the rail is secured with a screw. So, and then that's so you can service that if you ever need to work on your scope. Let's see, this piece for the scope has that little bit of supports in there from the 3D printing process. You can just take your knife and clean that out. Sometimes it's better to get under it and peel it back rather than trying to cut it out. But when you sand this, I use a power sander on the larger pieces. I got a little vibrating detail sander that I use, and that helps a lot. But I build a lot of them, so I understand it's an expense. You know, I mean, it was like $35 at Harbor Freight. So, but if you don't want to, buy it just for building the model, I understand. You can do it by hand. I've done it. I've built a few of them without the power sander. Yeah, be careful. I'm not responsible for any fingers except my own. Pretty well cleaned out, the sanding. Oh, and this is pretty much essential. You need a sanding sponge, because after you're done with your rough sanding, you need to be able to get in there. And this is fine, and I got a big package of them for cheap, like Lowe's or something, I can't remember. But you can find them anywhere that you can find hardware. And yeah, you need that because it'll follow the contour on pieces for you, especially when you're doing the grip and stuff. So, all right, so we'll get all this cleaned up, and also inside here, you'll need to remove that support. I usually use a pair of needle nose pliers, and just kind of. All right, so we're going to clean all these pieces up with the sandpaper, and you use your sticks to get into the tight places and follow this contour. On the bottom here will probably need quite a bit of work. Okay, so this is the rail system. I've got I went and cleaned up the rest of these parts so that all the surfaces are all right. So let's go ahead and start putting it together. The all right, the scope we're not gonna glue it all yet. Let's take these two pieces. This is come on. All right, I'm gonna have to clean this up a little bit with my sanding stick. Clean that up a little bit with the sanding stick, and that fits right together. So let's go ahead and put a little glue on this. We're going to glue some parts of this together, but I'll show you what to avoid at this point. So this is going to be painted silver, okay, and the knobs are going to be painted black, and these are going to be painted black. So we don't want to paint, we don't want to glue this together yet. We can test the fit. There's still some schmegma on the inside of there. I gotta get that out. Dremel. Well, I guess I'll do it off camera, but you could use a Dremel, get in there and clean up that edge a little bit. Just use my Dremel drum sander, and I just went around the inside there just to clean that up. And as you can see, that fits nicely into place, as should this. So what we're going to do now is on this tip, we're going to take the front and we're going to just eyeball that. It's easier if you look down the barrel, so you can eyeball the holes on the inside. So I'm going to put a little glue here. And then I'm just going to eyeball that myself. That in place until it dries. Same thing on these pieces here. Just line it up. Looking down there is easier to line it up if you do it that way. So we'll put a little, actually put the glue on this, but only on the inside edge there. Then I'll do it this way. See, that's where that extra thick comes in handy, because you got some time to alter your position. That looks good. Now that I have all my parts cleaned up for the rail system, everything's all sanded nicely. Oh, I did forget to get the inside surface of here, but see, that's why the thin popsicle stick, that fits in there nicely. Get the inside surface. Couple pieces of our rail together. Let's take our the one with the slot in it, the one where the rail goes into on the forward end, and they're gonna on the opposite end of where the groove, where the slot is. That's where these are gonna line up. So you want to mate these surfaces here. So you can actually use a barrel for a guideline if you want. I do better with my eye than I did with that piece of barrel. Oh, remember I was saying the edge of the stick might come in handy? Well, that's where it comes in handy, right there in those grooves. Is is take that one with the grooves, and we're going to put that right there on the... Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Listen, this is Ray from the future. Don't glue the rail to the scope yet. Wait until you put it in place. Yeah, because believe me, you'll regret it. There we go. Alright, so that fits nice. I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on there. And then this piece here will mate flush to that, making that cove for the scope. So we'll go ahead and glue that up too. Alright, so we'll hold that. See how this is going to work? The forward end of the rail is going to go into that hole, and then it snaps in just like that. Oh, that works perfect. Oh, I guess I'm a decent engineer. We can go ahead and lift that up, pop it out. Oh, also I should say, before you actually paint, you should, after you do your rough sanding, you should hit it with the sanding sponge, and actually you can see where it almost like polishes the plastic, and that's really ready for paint. That'll give you a nice finish. So just run this over all your pieces. I also wash them with alcohol, and make sure it dries fully before I blow them off with my air gun, and then I wash them with alcohol, or you can also use a tack rag. The Rust-Oleum 2X Ultra Cover. It does say it's specifically for plastic, and I use the bright silver, and that really, man, I'll tell you, you put a couple of dusting, 2, 3, 4 coats of just dusting. That's what I do when I paint these parts. I use my nozzle about 18 inches away, and I just let it kind of mist the piece, and you do that like 4 to 6 times, and man, you got a beautiful paint job. And I also use the Krylon Supermax black satin, and I get these at Walmart for like $6 a can, and I use this is the gloss white for the rest of the gun. I wanted to show you a tip about when you're painting these small parts. See, I glued these, just a little drop of super glue to the cardboard, and it stays put. And the surface that I glued down was where that's going to be where it's glued into the other parts of the scope anyway, so it's not going to affect it. And so that way you get to hold the board where you want and paint it really nice. And that was 3 coats, and they came out really nice. Now what I'm going to do is just wrap some masking tape around this lower portion, and then I'm going to shoot the 2 scope tips with that bright silver. So here are the parts of the rail system and the scope after I painted them. They're actually still a little bit tacky. I really probably shouldn't be handling them yet, but don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. You follow the directions. I glued this to this. You see how that silver came out? It really looks nice, don't it? It's bright silver. Alright, so and when you glue that on, you want the rail system. This is forward, and this is the rear. You want the knob on the left and on the top. We'll slip that in the back there. That fits nice. I cleaned up the edges with a little sanding stick, so we can get these to fit. So let me go ahead and glue them up. knobs in. I like to make them, you know, facing different ways. I don't want them straight. I want them to look like they've been adjusted. You want to make sure your barrels are fully seated inside of this silver center section, because if it's not, then it could be finished rail and scope. Here's the other two rail pieces. This is the one that we glued together, and we'll cover that in the next lesson. So there's our first lesson, the scope and rail system, and the next lesson we will start the barrel assembly. So we'll see you in the next lesson.